if AI were to double your customers' so think about your customers' productivity. If you built AI products that were to double, your customers' productivity, what happens to your ARR? Does that go up or down, or do we not know?
Welcome back, everybody, to the Revenue Problem Solvers podcast, which is built for revenue leaders who aren't afraid to say the things that they're stuck with and they actually need an answer. I'm Karl Ortmans, and on today's episode, we're going to unpack the topic that I think is the most commonly talked about right now across the leaders that I talk to. That's retention and churn. Today's podcast is sponsored by the fantastic team at Virtual Causeway. Imagine your sales team spending less time chasing and more time closing because buyers already know your name before that first call. Well, that's exactly what Virtual Causeway does. They help B2B companies get found earlier in the buying process by the right people through the right channels that actually influence business decisions today. Well, what's the result? It's fewer cold calls, it's better conversations, and it's pipeline that moves faster. You can visit them at virtualcauseway.com and don't forget to mention the show for a special rate. Okay. Your renewal conversation, it doesn't just start at renewal. It actually starts before the contract is even signed. And my guest today is Lukas Alexander. And that's the belief he's built his career around. Lukas spent 8 years at Cision. It's a SaaS media intelligence platform, building and running customer success teams at scale. And here he owned the retention number across global markets. But then he made a deliberate move to go to ChurnZero, which is essentially the software category built for the exact problem he's been fighting for a decade. He now leads their customer success team as a VP. He's contributed to their annual revenue leadership conference, he's contributed to their annual revenue leadership study, which has nearly 800 post-sale leaders who are surveyed. And he's been pretty outspoken about something that most people in the space won't say clearly. Churn isn't an engagement problem, it's a design problem. Lukas, welcome to the Revenue Problem Solvers podcast.
Thanks for having me, Carl. Looking forward to chatting with you today. Great to see you.
Yeah, me too. It's been fun. So let's jump into it and dive right in. To kick us off, can you share with the audience a little bit about your world? What industries or verticals do you work in? What are the selling motions? What size companies do you work with?
Yeah, so we work with, so you mentioned sort of the move from Cision to ChurnZero, and I have to say, like doing CS for CS, it takes a few weeks to sort of, wrap your head around that the first, 2, 3 weeks of the role. But, so we solve, we help customers with revenue growth across the customer teams. Essentially, whether that be an onboarding motion, whether that be an adoption motion, whether that be a customer engagement, customer enablement through the renewal, expansion, voice of customer. So that's what ChurnZero does, and we work with companies across mostly mid-market and enterprise, and essentially we work across a whole bunch of different verticals. Cybersecurity. We work with healthcare technology. We work with a whole bunch of different verticals. Any company with a customer success motion in SaaS. So we work with those types of teams, helping them solve their revenue problems.
Nice. And you're running a sales led and a PLG motion, or just strictly sales led?
Yeah,
Or
so we do.
customer led?
So essentially, we retain and grow customers on the customer success team here. Primarily, really facilitating that buying motion, whether that's being reselling the customer on the value of the product, helping them grow into new products as they mature their customer success programs, and as they go through acquisition, as they go through M&A, et cetera.
Nice. Nice. All right. So how we got today's topic, and I really want to spend some time here because I think this is going to be a lot of fun. And there's some topics in here that I think, or there's maybe some beliefs that it'll be fun to unpack with you today. And so how we got to today's topic is I asked Lukas, just like everybody, a successful revenue initiative you've led, or an existing revenue challenge that you're solving or have solved or currently solving. And it was, well, we quickly landed on the topic of churn and more specifically pricing models and contract lengths in 2026 to reduce churn. If we start here, and maybe my question that I'll, not maybe, the question I'd like to ask you to start, multi year deals. Are they a genuine churn prevention tool, or are they just buying time on a problem that's actually still there?
Yeah, so I would say, from what I see in speaking with other revenue leaders, um, especially companies who don't do multi-year contracts today, for example, and are having, some type of a churn problem. Um, I would say, it's generally a quick way to solve a long-term churn problem. So really, the concept of like getting customers locked in, and also benefiting from the renewal over in the first anniversary, second anniversary, etc. But I don't think the multi-year deal is solving the actual problem at the core. It's a great tactic and it's a great way to help get longevity for your company, in terms of like what numbers you're presenting to your board and all of that. But I don't think it's solving the problem at hand. I think like that's where CS and revenue leaders need to dig a bit deeper under the surface. Are we having product fit challenges? Are we having customers struggling with macroeconomics and budget? Are they struggling with data? Are they struggling with product? Are they struggling with the customer experience? So the multi-year is a way to help secure that longevity, but I don't think it solves necessarily it's not the solver, the be all end all of solving churn problems and growing customers.
I really like that you called that out because if you just look at the data points and you say, well, somebody's churned, it's got to be a them issue or it's an us issue. But actually diagnosing the problem is something that I think is important. So for you, where with ChurnZero and even all the customers you get to work with, because you kind of have the most interesting view of this working with, basically you and other customers, and you see it at scale. Where are they now starting to look? Are they actually going to the product team and saying, hey, you know what? In the product journey, this is where they fall off. Or are you looking at it from the data point to say, our retention drops off because they get to a certain point and they've done everything they can, and then the tool isn't big enough? These are just some examples that I'm throwing at you, but where are customers now, or even yourself, digging under the data and saying, okay, let me diagnose and pinpoint the problem?
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of, and I do encourage all of our customers, before you even dive into the data, because the data is going to be driven by things that you as a leader think could be happening, right? And I think that's a big part of this is like you have theories and you want to pressure test them with checking the data, right? But I think a good first step that any revenue leader that operates in a customer centric world, like talk to a few customers first. Talk to some customers who are churning, who are out the door, who are out the door already, right? Like talk to them first and get their perspective, because I have seen in several situations where hey, the things that you may have thought was the reason the customer churned, your customer has a or your ex customer may have a different perspective there. So I would say, starting with, speak to your customers. Customer success and customer experience, customer work is all about, there's a big relationship part of it, right? So, use that relationship, like, to help you as a company grow and change and evolve. And then based on that, like, take what your customer tells you around why they, think that they've moved on, and then look at, do you have good churn analysis process? Do you have AI that's doing this for you? Or maybe your CSMs are doing this for you today. But when a customer churns, do we do any type of post-mortem? Do we go in and say, okay, what was the true reason? Like, oh, this customer was a bad fit, or they never completed onboarding, or they had a leadership change and the leader coming in, used a competitor for the past 5 years, and so they brought that competitor in, right? So I think you need to have a good set of churn categories, churn reasons, and then getting systematic in how we track that. And then, it's not something that gets solved in the first like 30 days, right? If you're a leader taking on a new role and being asked to solve a churn problem, this is something that you got to look month over month over the first, 3-4 months and see if there are any trends in that churn data.
Mm. I like how you called out the churn analysis process. What
Yeah.
we're looking at now with everything going on with AI and all the different tools and everything, churn has to be a conversation that I think people should be talking about. And I've talked a little bit about this on the podcast and tried to get other people's viewpoints. If you look at today, and even like the tools that you use today from an AI perspective, right? Like you go across. If you were looking at what you use today versus last year, I'm going to guess that those have changed. And it seems like we're seeing an evolution of this month-to-month contract and not as much as multi-year deals in more of the the tools that we want to see everybody start to use, like those AI tools. And so I'll ask you the question. I think there's a lot in here, but the question that I'd like to ask you is like, how has that churn analysis process changed, even on your side, or what have you done differently to try to highlight these things and get ahead of it?
Yeah. So I guess, with AI, what I've seen, and, in terms of the tools that we use, I'm in a unique position because we build the tools for customers to do this exact thing, the AI tools, and then we use them ourselves. Actually, we use them ourselves first for months before they get to customers, which is great.
Yeah.
But yeah, they've absolutely changed, because the way you would run a churn analysis before, for example, like 2 years ago, would be, hey, your customer churns, the CSM, goes out and fills in some type of a field on an opportunity record somewhere, and then, it goes into some, review process. Today, there's, you can use agents to sort of look through usage data, look through, customer feedback data, and give the agent that model, right, to systematically, conduct a churn analysis. And what's great about that is there's no room for bias. There's less and less subjectivity. There's a lot more consistency, right? You're asking AI to, take a model and, and look through the customer history, look through the customer context, and, produce some reasons around why this customer might have churned. So there's a lot more consistency. There's a lot more time savings for the CSM, right? That's an admin task. Nobody got into customer success to be, filling out fields on an opportunity. We got into CS to be talking, to have, build relationships, build partnerships with customers, and help them get the most out of the products and services that they buy, with you. So yeah, so it's definitely a pivot towards, using AI for a lot of this. But then when you dig deeper into the churn analysis, what I've seen a lot of is, customer health scores were, when CS was born, customer health scores, that had usage data factors, that had survey results factors in it, that has stayed with CS for quite some time. But with AI, right? AI, you can really get into the relationship data, right? The tone, the sentiment of relationships. And that's where I'm actually seeing customers, where we're at ChurnZero, where we're seeing customers find earlier, churn signals or churn risk signals, right? Because it in a lot of cases it shows up in the relationship first, while, your usage and health is still green, and then it dropped, and then the customer's usage of your products and services goes down, but the relationship was damaged early on. So, right, you asked me what happens in 2-3 months. In the first 2-3 months, the relationship needs to happen, right? Because yeah, your customers bought your tool, they're investing, they're using, usage will be high, but if the relationship is not there, eventually, that'll come around and hit the usage.
And with that relationship, are you seeing, from your perspective across all the companies you work with, are you seeing that more human to human, or are you seeing more of that human to chatbot? I'll say, for lack of a better term, where's the relationship starting, or maybe it's stronger? Is it I use the chatbot that you gave me access to, and I can just ask all kinds of questions as a customer, so I'm good, or is it that human to human, and that's the most important thing to start from the beginning?
Yeah, I would say from a chatbot or speaking with AI bots or is very so I see that a lot more in like reactives. So there's room in the term reactive in customer success and in customer work has become perceived as very negative, but there are moments for reactive, in the customer journey, and that often comes up in like customer support tickets. Hey, the customers run into a problem of some sort and they need some type of help, right? So that's a great use for AI or chatbots and technology like that. But customer work, right, is all about helping the customer be successful. It's all about listening to the customer's priorities, guiding the customer, giving them recommendations and best practice around how best to leverage it. And so there's lots of value on being on a live call with your customer. So, getting CSMs out of the reactive work, replacing that type of thing with chatbots or AI bots or those types of things, where they can spend more time on, workshops or or like value reviews or those types of things. That helps, that helps the relationship very, very early on, right?
Hmm.
Where CSMs could spend more time connecting you with, peers in the customer network, or, helping customers be a thought partner for strategy, right? Those are the moments where there's proactive live relationship building time that adds a ton of value to the partnership, where we can lean on more AI bots for a lot of those like reactive touch points.
I like where you're headed on this one, and I'm curious. How has that journey? Because the journey of a customer is changed, and even what I'm hearing from you, and I could be off, but what I'm hearing is where you can leverage AI to kind of serve the customer faster, but then where you can deepen the relationship is really that human side.
Yeah.
From your team, what have you done, or how are you seeing across the board that is changing that customer journey for retention?
Yeah, so I mean, onboarding and implementation is onboarding and implementation. So like there's a big technical lift, a big technical component to the relationship there. Some of the folks who are potentially implementing the solution are there, purely for that implementation on both the customer side and also on the vendor side. And then so a lot of that is still, is still the same, although there's a lot more sort of, digital or in-app, a lot more AI driven, tools to help customers set up faster. But then when you think of the post onboarding period, I would say a lot of the reactive, technical help, like I mentioned, is being handled by AI. But CSMs are being expected to do things like success plans with customers, right? So if we're going to give more, like remove CSMs from the reactive, like you need to fill the gaps with more of the proactive, relationship building activities. So you should generally see, and we're seeing a lot more of this with our customers, is spike in customers with a success plan, or spike in value reviews or business reviews with your customers, or even new types of engagements with customers around like thought leadership sessions, or office hours with multiple customers. So any types of those value add engagements with customers, as AI handles a lot more of the admin and the reactive work. They're like it's a math equation, right? There should be more time for these. So what I'm seeing across the customer journey is customers plotting a lot more of these engagements, and whereas in the past it was a lot more of like, oh, having regular cadence meetings where we go over troubleshoot your problems with you, right? Your product challenges with you, to more CSM spending time on success planning sessions, business reviews, that type of thing.
I have two questions. One's about metrics, but I'll come to that second. But just as you're talking about that, Across CS org, are you seeing case deflection? Like, are you seeing cases uptick with everything that's going on with AI, or are you seeing AI actually reduce some of those cases and people can start to self-serve faster?
I would say, like in speaking with customers about the AI products that they build, I would say, I wouldn't say it's so definitely with case deflection and having, more interactive experiences on your knowledge base, that type of thing.
Hmm.
That's been there for a while. So I think CS teams and CX teams have benefited from that. But I will say, in terms of support tickets, as companies roll out more AI products, right? There's a lot more questions around, and there's new types of support cases that are emerging, right? Like case
Hmm.
types. Think about, like, most companies who build AI products now have case types for, like, oh, my AI is hallucinating, right? So there's
Hmm.
AI hallucination case types now. So I'd say more of the types of support cases and deflections are, the nature of it is evolving, to sort of align more with the types of challenges that AI technology, has versus what, your traditional like SaaS platform would have, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm seeing.
Which makes sense. And then going into the metrics, and maybe this is a little bit deeper, the next layer deeper is, what are the metrics that you are seeing or that you're using or even your customers are using that are different than last year? Because you talked about health score, you talked about, some of the NPS score, etc.
Yeah.
What are we looking at now? Or maybe the better question is, what are people not looking at that they should be looking at?
Yeah. So churn scores and like churn and health score predictability on renewal has always been one. And I think that should stay in customer success. But I am seeing a lot more companies and CS leaders and revenue leaders look at, like, have a separate relationship score, right?
Hmm.
So I'm seeing that come up in a lot more conversations. And really the idea there, as I mentioned earlier, is like, your usage scores, or, your general health scores could be green, but, your relationship scores could be showing red. And relationship scoring should look at, like, sentiment. Are your customers talking about the right topics on, in meetings, those types of things, or are they spending their time mentioning competitors, right? Or what your product doesn't do. So there's a lot of, churn signals in the relationship. And we're at a point now where it does warrant its own score that could be folded into an overall health score. But I think there's a good use case for looking at being able to track sort of divergence between, customer health scores and then relationship scores. Because in a lot of cases, CS leaders are surprised that it's different, right?
Hmm.
In from your churn score. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing, so obviously NRR and growth over the past, couple of years have been tracked and being talked about in board meetings and all of that. But I'm seeing a lot more boards, a lot more, board meetings ask about AI adoption metrics, right?
Hmm.
And so as a CS leader, so you're selling, you could get good growth from your AI sales, and like customers buying credits or tokens or different types of AI products that you have. And companies are buying a lot of that today, right? They're buying a whole bunch of different types of them. But what boards are proactively looking ahead at, and what investors are looking ahead at, is, okay, how well can this company now retain that AI revenue, right? So it's one thing to sell it, it's another thing to retain it. So a lot more boards, a lot more investors are really interested in adoption as they've ever been before. So those are some of the changes in metrics and changes in overall, numbers that are important at the leadership level. And if you're a CS or a revenue leader today that's, selling AI products, absolutely, like, sell. Obviously we want to sell as much as we can and drive that NRR number. But now's the time to also, if you're not looking at your AI revenue as a separate stream, and looking at retention on just the AI products, you should definitely start today.
I like I like that you called that out because all those and now I will say that I'll sort of preface it by saying I would hate to be a CFO today in the world of technologies, because how do you forecast or predict what your token usage is going to be? And you could get hit with a huge bill and be like, where did this come from?
Yeah. Well, that's also why, like, as it going back to the multi-year topic, right? That's why, like, buyers aren't afraid of commitment, right? Like, see if like buyers are being afraid of being, they're afraid of being locked into something that eventually becomes, wrong, or becomes less, underperforming. Like, think just about Chat GPT versus Claude, right? That has shifted, and maybe it'll shift back in 3 months. Who knows, right? But
Mm-hmm.
what CFOs are thinking about, they're thinking about the long-term commitment, thinking about the best solution for their team and the most cost-effective solution as well. So I think that's what's really on the CFO's mind today. But overall, AI has really shifted that conversation, and AI adoption metrics have become the hot topic in, board conversations and top of mind for investors nowadays on, is how well is how what is this company going to look like in 2 to 3 years? Like, are they able to retain all of the AI products that they've spent the last years building? Sure, they've been able to sell it, but is it sticking, right?
Yeah. I'm actually just trying to think back to a conversation that I had with a gentleman named Roey Hartu. I don't know if you've ever heard of his name. Do you know who he
Yep,
is? Okay.
I've heard it. Yeah,
So Roey and I had a really great conversation, and I think I want to weave this into this conversation because I think it's relevant. He was sharing with me that in like last year alone, ChatGPT and Salesforce, I'm going to mess the numbers up individually, but they changed their pricing models multiple times. And what I mean multiple times, like I think it was like 15 or 18 times each that they change it because they're trying to figure out this AI model. And so now, like you're talking today, as a CS person, as you're going to change that, how are you enabling your teams to have those pricing conversations with customers because things are changing as fast as they are? Is that causing your teams to slow down, or are they able to keep up? Are customers starting to get fatigued with it? Like, is there anything that you're seeing, especially around all this AI conversation?
yeah. AI, there's a big pricing model disruption happening, and everyone's sort of doing this differently. And everyone's watching what sort of Salesforce is doing and what some of the other, big companies out there are doing. But generally, what I would say is, like, seat-based, pricing assumes human activity, right? So if you sell a seat on your product, it assumes someone is using that user license, and it assumes that human activity. But I think AI really breaks that assumption entirely. One person with AI, does what five used to do in a seat. Like, your pricing model can collapse pretty much overnight. So
Mm.
I would say, like, what I'm seeing a lot more is, companies doing a hybrid, right? I think that's probably the safest and most effective, revenue bet today, because, you know, uh, it allows you to keep revenue from seat-based and platform-based while letting customers sort of pilot AI into, like, getting value from AI and buying and using more AI with you. I think that's a great way to be thinking about this right now, but that could change. And so, for any CSM out there or CS leaders, like, if you sell to customers, who also sell AI, that's a good strategic conversation that your CSM could have with your customer, because you could bet your customers thinking about the exact same thing, right? So
Mm.
I'd say we're in a stage right now where, there's still a lot of watching happening, but there's a big sort of push on hybrid pricing models, which is I believe what Salesforce is doing at the moment.
Mm.
But that, like, I think we also need to be ready to pivot as AI continues to evolve, and it's evolving much faster than platform and traditional SaaS ever did. Cloud-based SaaS, for example, 10 years ago. So
Yeah.
I think companies need to. So RevOps teams out there, if you're a RevOps team who uses Salesforce and you're building a credit-based model in CPQ for the first time, or you better be building that to be able to change quickly, right, as the next sort of pricing model evolution sort of comes up, because you'll be expected to change it pretty quickly.
That is something that we haven't dove into much on the podcast. I've been talking with some others, and I do think that that is something that is potentially overlooked because of everything that's changing so fast. That means you have to change your systems incredibly fast. That means you have to be updating things, and there's a constant training, there's a constant rollout, there's all these different things that you have to do from a structural perspective to ensure that it works. And then you basically need to have somebody do the analysis of it and say, right or wrong, did we hit the mark or not? And then if we have to change, I know Anthropic changed, they reduced their pricing this year, right? So it was they actually reduced it, which was great. Others have increased, etc. Are you seeing anybody that's really nailing this pricing conversation?
I would say, like, I don't think anyone there's no silver bullet answer right now. Like, is this right or wrong? I think it's going to depend on, are you so I think you also got to look at the type of company you were. So were you born in sort of AI? Are you an AI only company, or were you sort of traditional SaaS? You had a platform and now you're doing AI for the first time. So I think there's lots of variables out there, and there's no right pricing model right now. It's also going to depend on how sound your AI story is, how well your AI tools actually perform, right? Are you retaining them? So while one, a bulk credit prepay model might work for one company, an annual credit model might work for another. So it's really going to depend on a whole bunch of things. And truthfully, Karl, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer right now. But what I am seeing is that there are, lots of companies sitting in the hybrid stage, because it's easy to pivot there right now. But when you think of you mentioned enablement before, I think, like, it's not just pricing models; it's your entire go-to-market function that needs to evolve, right? So looking from your product enablement all the way through to your revenue enablement managers, and your go-to-market engineers and your RevOps teams, and has that whole go-to-market flow evolved for velocity? Because like this is going to change from a pricing, from a product perspective. Like, it changes, so it's changing so fast at a much higher velocity. And I think we shouldn't just be looking at the pricing model, should be looking at the whole go-to-market model. Does it align with how fast you're being expected to go as a company?
Yeah, that is well said, because it isn't just, well, we'll make this one change. There's a massive ripple or domino effect inside of a company, because if you miss one thing and your systems break, then all of a sudden you got customers that are so frustrated with you, like, I signed up for this, why am I getting this? What is going on here? And then that could also be a potential churn.
So
go ahead.
No, I was going to say, one of the, I like to give sort of, like, actions, and you mentioned, what's one thing that you could do, right away. And I would challenge, I asked a couple of revenue leaders this, and, they didn't have an answer for me, but I would say, if you were to go to your CFO tomorrow, so on the topic of pricing and seat-based and AI and credits and all of that, if AI were to double your customers' so think about your customers' productivity. If you built AI products that were to double, your customers' productivity, what happens to your ARR? Does that go up or down, or do we not know, right? So if nobody has that answer in the business right now, your pricing strategy is probably not built for the world that your go-to-market is not actually built for the world you're operating in. So I would encourage anyone, listening, to think about that question. If AI were to double your users' productivity today, what happens to your ARR? And I think that could be a good guiding question to helping you decide like around the pricing structure and the go-to-market, structure that you have in place today, and does it fit?
Hmm. So that ties really well into where I think the next logical question is, to go back to sort of the topic. We talked about renewals and multi-year, and we really haven't talked about that. But even all this pricing from the renewals for multi-years, what are you starting to see as prediction of success? Is it the pricing models? Is it the relationship score? Is it the health score? How does this whole conversation come together?
Yeah, I would say it's at the moment having a way to be, if you're going to get a multi-year, there's got to be a middle ground, right? If you're going to ask for, so you need to be building, you need to earn a multi-year commitment, right? And that happens not just in the product usage, but it happens in the relationship. We buy from people, we like, we buy from companies we like, we buy into the brand, right, as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it starts with the relationship. But I think, being able to build in flexibility where you get long term on your base products, right? Maybe your platform and that type of thing, but giving some type of flexibility in the AI, because the reality is right now, everyone wants to experiment, everyone wants to pilot, they want to try all the options that are out there. There's lots of options out there, right?
Yeah.
Like we're not short of AI options.
No,
So
we are not.
yeah. So I think it's about, building flexibility into your contracts. You could still get a multi-year deal, from a customer, on the base, like, and that's hinged on, previous success, forward-looking success. It's hinged on the relationship. It's hinged on ROI on platform. But then, building flexibility around the AI component could be a good way to get longevity while navigating like this whole, some of the AI uncertainty that there is right now. I think other ways around caps or true ups or, different types of like ratchet clauses, those types of things are also good ways to be flexible, but it gives buyers a reason to sort of commit by removing, penalties of, that could be tied to long-term commitments.
And I don't think I've asked it directly, so I will. Are you seeing buyers more reluctant right now to a multi-year deal, or are they okay with doing a multi-year deal? Like, is the renewal process like, hey, I'll do a 1 year. I'm not going to do multi-year because things are happening so fast, or you know what? Do you have an option for 6 months? I'm not sure what that conversation sounds like from the circles you're talking to.
I would say, so what I see a lot right now is like, you know, we're talking with your, executive sponsors, your decision makers, your buyers, your economic buyers, and we're talking about 4 year deals, and then it gets to like, the ultimate, it gets to the finance desk, and then it gets sort of like there's more questions. I'm not saying like, CFOs are kiboshing all deals that are out there right now, but I think the layers of approvals are changing, right?
Mm,
Where decision maker before could have approved a multi-year deal, those are getting to the CFO's desk right now, and the second there's AI, there's questions about, all right, like is longevity the right way to go?
mhm,
Now, I don't think that's the only reason. I think, longevity is not just influenced by AI. I think it's, also influenced by, you know, uh, the debt, like the SaaS, the tech, like the debt crisis that's currently going on, where, there were some companies are, need to get ready to sell now because of the debt crisis going on. So it's not just AI. I think there's other like economics and stuff like that in play. But at the end of the day, right, there's more layers of approval, and as it gets to the CFO's desk, like there's a lot more scrutiny on multi-year contracts. But again, if
I've
you're getting the value piece right, you shouldn't have a problem to like
right.
sell, get multi-year on the platform. So if you're doing the right things in month 2 and 3, like you also CSMs need to be able to help. I think this is an overlooked skill right now where it's like we sell on the value, but CSMs need to coach the economic buyers to sell a multi-year renewal internally.
Yeah.
I don't see that. I think that's a skill that CSMs or account managers like need to lean into now more than ever.
I totally agree with you. And I've actually had conversations with some companies lately, and what they're saying is they're getting approvals all the way up, and it has AI, and it lands on that person's desk, and it's a brand new platform. They've had multi-year deals stripped back to like, okay, look, we're only going to do month to month, and then that AE or that seller, they almost feel like they lose the account. What I do like, and even with them, they're trying to coach their buyers on, hey, here's how this conversation has gone with other companies, and here's how you have it. But I
Yeah,
do like that you've called that out from the renewal side of, I need to coach my champion, my buyer, to go internally and say, hey, look, this is how this goes. It's not look, but hey, here's how this conversation can go. I'm going to arm you with the best of information possible so that you feel comfortable with the commitment, and
yeah,
knowing that they've already gone through cycles with you with the introduction of AI. I have to think that that's going to be a little bit simpler. So
yeah, yeah, for sure. And I do think as well, like you need to be, you'd be surprised where this does not exist and how many like renewals teams where this does not exist. You think it's like assumed and it's obvious, but like I would encourage revenue leaders out there to check in your team when in the renewals. First of all, when does that renewal process start, right?
mm,
Are we starting it like the actual contracting side of it? Are we starting it at early enough? And two, are we asking about the signature process, right? Because I see a lot of CS teams where they assume, right, the process is going to go the same way as last year's renewal or two renewals ago, just because like that's the process. But I think we need to keep asking about like, is the signature process still the same? Like, talk to me about. You'd be surprised. Like everyone is evaluating everything right now, so you need to be asking early on enough. What's your evaluation process look like? Like, tell me about like, are there any new signature decision making processes in place? And I'd be willing to bet as well. A lot of like economic buyers are only find out about a new process now that it's time to renew this tool that they've used for years, right?
mhm.
So could be a surprise, and then like work with your go to market teams as well to build you know um, internal like selling decks for your economic buyers, or you need to have, especially if you're renewing AI, you need to have some type of an AI like impact overview or impact summary, because no one's going to renew AI based on nothing, right? Based on hearsay.
Some huge nuggets here. I do agree with you. The renewal, and something I like to say is like the renewal doesn't start at month 9. It actually starts the moment that the implementation has been completed. Now you got to really sell it. And even that buying process, things are changing. The buying team has grown. The number of decision makers has grown. And with tools that are starting to overlap with each other, we're seeing
Yeah,
some challenges of, well, I'm actually going with this tool over here and it kind of does this. And some of these deals are falling apart at the
yeah,
signature table because they don't know. And that coaching that you just talked about is asking about that approval process and what's changed. That is, it doesn't matter if you're in CS, it doesn't matter if you're in the CS side or even on the A side. It's a great habit and well done. It's a something I'm definitely leaning into
yeah.
myself.
Yeah, so like lean into, like, you do sales methodologies and stuff like that at your company, like like a lot of those talk about like the asking about the evaluation process, and like asking those questions up front. Like, is it early stage questions, or is it late? What are early stage? What are late stage questions? So
Yeah.
yeah, especially if you're a lot more CIOs at the table approving contracts now, small contracts too, not just large ones. Any contract, like, you'll get CIOs involved, not just CFOs anymore, approving
Mhm.
any type of tech. So yeah,
Awesome. Hey, Lucas, this has been great. I'm realizing we're about to hit the hour, and I told you I'd get you out of here. But it was super great conversation. Everybody likes new and nobody likes different. And when you do both at the same time, it can cause either friction or uncertainty. So for somebody who's just listened to this and they're thinking about leveling up their CS side and the renewals processes, what are 2 or 3 actionable things you'd say, hey, go look at these things on Monday, and it'll give you a clue for how to improve?
Yeah, so one of them was what I said before, right? Ask your CFO if AI doubles your customers' efficiency or productivity, like what would actually happen to your ARR? And if no one knows the answer, your pricing strategy, your go-to-market strategy is not built for the world that you're in right now. And then I would say more on the revenue, the retention front. Pull your, I don't know, 3 to 5 most at-risk renewals that you have coming up and have an honest internal conversation about whether is my pricing model still fair to those customers given what, how AI has changed, in the past 12 months, 18 months, whatever. Don't wait for the customer to raise it. Like do it proactively.
Mhm.
And if your model feels wrong, your customer probably already knows that. And then, the one thing we just spoke about as well is, go look at the renewal operations side. Like when are my CSMs, when are my account managers asking about the decision-making process, the evaluation process, because willing to bet lots of money, like everyone's evaluating everything right now. So look at the mechanics of the contracting process in your renewal cycle. Is it too late? Is it early enough? And when are we asking about evaluation and decision making, right?
Yeah.
And do we have the right tools to equip our leaders, our economic buyers to sell on our behalf?
If that's not 3 actionable things for you to do to level yourself up, I'm not sure what's done. I really like that. Lukas, where can people find you if they want to learn a little bit more, or even they want to talk to you?
Yeah, for sure. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. You could find us at ChurnZero. Find me at ChurnZero. We have happy to talk to you about what we do, anything that we spoke about on today's call. But it's all today's podcast. But it's all stuff that I deal with on a day-to-day basis. Things that everyone is wondering about, right? Because we're talking about it here today. It's stuff that everyone's sort of navigating together right now. So, especially on the post-sales side.
Yeah, awesome. Lukas and I've only had one short conversation. We've actually never met, even though you can see we're both hockey fans. And
Yeah,
I've really enjoyed this, Lukas, and I feel like I'm gonna have to come back to you and do a second version of this, or a second episode with you, because I think there's a lot more here. And I really appreciate your views and thinking about the renewal side and actually expanding it across the entire function. It's not just one group that does it, it's an entire company. And NRR
yeah,
is the thing that we're really leaning into. And I'm glad that companies are starting to see it, because I like to say, if your foundation isn't solid, it doesn't matter how big you can build your skyscraper, because it's going to continually fall. So
yeah.
this was a lot of fun. I really appreciate it. That's going to wrap up another episode of the Revenue Problem Solvers. Obviously, want to thank Lukas for sharing incredibly invaluable insights and some strategy you can put into action. Remember, success leaves clues, and every revenue problem has a solution. Sometimes you just need the right conversation to find it. Until next time, it's Karl with Revenue Problem Solvers, helping you turn your obstacles into opportunities. Thank you for investing your time with us today, and we'll see you in the next episode.